Good evening, Vietnam, and good morning, Los Angeles. I would like to begin our global series. Thank you for joining our global real estate market trend. Kick it up a notch. Bam, Vietnam. My name is Alex Lee from KW Executive. I'm the 2020 Chair of Global Business Council. I would like to thank our 2020 President, Mindy Ye, and our Global Business Council Committee Co-Vice Chair, Pauline Lam, Co-Vice Chair, Shan Zhang, and Yin Bird, CAR Vice Chair of the Global Real Estate Forum. She's also the NAR Global Alliance Vice Chair, and all of you to make this virtual meeting possible. Thank you all for your participation in this meeting. A friendly reminder, during this meeting, all participants will be muted. And should you have a question or a comment, please enter it into the chat box. The host will read your question during the Q&A session of the meeting. Please remember to join our upcoming Global Real Estate Market Trend Series in the months of June, July, and August. Please also stay until the end of the session for a chance to win gift cards. These gift cards are sponsored by Loan Direct, Joe Lam, and Teresa Nguyen. This meeting being recorded and will be available on our YouTube, West San Gabriel Valley Realtors channels. On September 18, 2018, West San Gabriel Valley Realtors and Vietnam National Real Estate Association they signed a memorandum of understanding, the MOU, in the International Real Estate Conference, the IREC 2018 in Hanoi, Vietnam. Our goal is to exchange real estate information between Vietnam and the USA. Now, let's move to Teresa Nguyen to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Alex. Happy Friday, everyone. Today, we are glad to invite our special speaker, Lieu Nguyen, to update us on Vietnam. Lieu Nguyen, in her second term as NAR Global Ambassador to Cambodia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. She was a former NAR President, liaison to Vietnam for 2 terms. Lieu was working in Southeast Asia for almost 10 years, based in Vietnam from 1996 to 2005, responsible for Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar in logistics. Let's welcome Ms. Lieu Nguyen.
Xin chào. Thank you so much, Teresa, for the introduction. Xin chào that's hello, that's good morning, that's good afternoon, good evening, greetings. That's in Vietnamese. And as the world is becoming more connected, there are increasing demands for investors looking for investments beyond borders. And so what does that mean for all of us as realtors and for the folks who are working in the real estate industry? There's one word that comes to mind, that's opportunities, right? And the reason for us to be here today. I love this quote from philosopher Seneca. It says, luck happens when preparations meet opportunities. And my goal today is for the next 40 minutes or so to give you quick glimpses of Vietnam, quick updates, just enough to make you dangerous. And hopefully you will learn a few things that will help differentiate you from the crowd as it prepares you to welcome opportunities so that when the opportunities do rise, bam, you will rise and you will soar. And what we will touch on is we're going to have a quick snapshots of Vietnam. So we talk about a little bit about culture. We'll talk about the opportunities, the trends, and hold on. And also why Vietnam is the hype. To me, when you talk, when you want to learn about a country, you want to start learning a little bit about its history and just understand that will help you appreciate and understand the culture a little bit more. So a little bit about history of Vietnam is that Vietnam was colonized by thousands of years by the Chinese. That's from 111 before Christ to 900 AD after death. And so later on, the French came and they colonized Vietnam from 1987 to 1954. And then in between that time frame, there's a little bit of a break during World War II, where the Japanese had reigned Vietnam from 1941 to 1945. Understanding that tad bit of history alone, it will take you a long way. And you will notice that in many of the Vietnamese customs, there are very many customs that are similar to the Chinese, while other Vietnamese customs are very heavily influenced by the French. The Japanese were there for such a short time, so you don't see so much of that in the Vietnamese culture to make that impact. With that said, let's look at the business environment in Vietnam. First, when we talk about women in the workplace, most of us know in Asia, for example, woman's place is not in the world, it's in the home. But in many, and that's what it is for many countries. But, and the men are the breadwinners, right? But in Vietnam, you see women in many high, powerful positions. Like one of the former vice president of Vietnam was a woman. One of the today's Vietnamese billionaire is a woman. And you will see that women are in many of the head of the companies in many of those high, powerful positions. And this is quite different when you compare it with other Asian countries. And I think that what this stems from is probably from the old days when the Vietnamese men were considered as scholars. And so what they do is they stay home, they study, and then they teach. While the women were the ones that go out every day to the market, they're buying, selling, negotiating, and they're the one that put the food on the table. So that is something, if you compare it to the other Asian culture, Vietnam is quite different there. When you talk about handshakes, as I said earlier, Vietnamese were influenced by the French. So when you talk about handshakes in the business world, especially when you're in the metropolitan cities like Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, it's quite the norm. But don't be surprised or don't get offended if you get a lame handshake, just because they are not that used to it. But as Vietnam is moving toward globalization, you know, you will get more firm handshakes, and that definitely will change. Some things that's very interesting in Vietnam that you don't see here as much in the US. One of the thing is when you walk down the street and you see a group of women holding hands or putting their arms around each other, which is very rare what you see here in the US, what we're used to here. But in Vietnam, that is just something that's quite normal. And that's their way of showing sisterly love. That's their way of showing respect for each other. And same for the men. You will see like two men walking down the street and putting their arms around each other. And that's their way of showing camaraderie, brotherly love. And it's quite common there in the Vietnamese culture and probably some of the Asian country as well. Face saving is the big thing. This is something that's applicable across Asia. And for the Vietnamese, face is the individual social standing. And it is a key part of the Vietnamese business culture. And so you want to avoid at all costs, to whatever it is, at all costs, to cause anyone to lose face, because it's almost unforgivable. So understanding how to save face, that will help you build a very strong relationship with your Vietnamese business partners, and it will give you credibility, not just in Vietnam, but also across Asia, and give you a better relationship in working with them. So understanding a little bit of these culture will help you understand your business partners better, your clients more. So when speaking to a person in a way which is sensitive to a unique culture, it enables you to build that relationship. And over time, hopefully you'll be able to build that trust. And so when the trust is there, doors of opportunities will open up to you. So why Vietnam? We hear so much hypes about Vietnam over the past couple of years. And so here we go. You know, you've heard that I think JLL a few years ago, I think JLL had mentioned that Vietnam ranked in the top 10 most dynamic cities in the world, with Ho Chi Minh City ranked #2, and then Hanoi was like #8, right? And so besides that, the economic growth in Vietnam has been consistent since the year 2000. And all of this started from they launched back in 1986, they launched the economic reforms. And then the economic growth of Vietnam has grown since 1986 until today. And according to World Bank, Vietnamese economy has been one of the fastest growing economies. And today, the GDP for Vietnam is 6.46. So actually, this is pre-COVID. It was 6.46, and it's above 6 through 2019 as well. And because now with COVID, obviously, it's impacting the world's economies, and you know, they are expected to go down slightly. So during COVID, what they do is they're adjusting every week they meet and they adjust that GDP accordingly. And as of last night, I was at a conference in Vietnam through a Facebook Live, and the Prime Minister had mentioned that he's really pushing for 5.4 GDP, which I think a lot of the economists are forecasting, saying that it's quite tough for them to reach that. The other thing that Vietnam is very good is that favorable government policies, they are providing a lot of incentives to multinational companies, especially if they focus on high-tech and healthcare industries. So if you are one of those companies, or your clients are one of those companies looking to invest overseas, if they are investing in high-tech in Vietnam and healthcare in Vietnam, then you're going to get to enjoy a lot of corporate free corporate taxation, import duties tax will be waived, those kind of things. So they create a lot of incentives to lure in foreign investors into Vietnam. And for real estate, you know, they have new real estate laws allowing foreigners to own real estate, which had brought Vietnamese real estate through the roof. And so Vietnam becoming a hotspot for manufacturing. And why is that? Is because now a lot of the trade that's going on, trade war, so a lot of companies now doing manufacturing in China, they are migrating to Vietnam. And that has actually been going on for the past couple of years. And so sectors like textile, clothing, you know, and now Vietnam is looking to move toward more high-tech direction. And the reason for that is so that to help bring in more opportunities for Vietnam. And again, the tax incentives are usually in the form of corporate tax, import duty, land use tax as well. And the Vietnamese government used both incentives and revision to the regulations to attract more foreign investors. And as I mentioned earlier, they had changed a real estate law to attract more foreign investors into Vietnam to invest into real estate. And obviously that proved that it has worked really well, because Vietnam recorded 2.4 billion in foreign investment. And if you know, the size of Vietnam is maybe a little bit bigger than Tennessee. Slightly, it's much smaller than California. So that's quite a number for them. Population growth, Vietnam currently about 95 million, depends on who you talk to. Some of them said 99, some said 94. The last I checked, it's 95 million. And right now it's ranked 14th largest country in terms of population. And they are expecting for the year 2030, Vietnam's population is gonna go up to 105 million. And their demographics, I mean, they're young. The median age is about 30.8 years. If you compare that with China, I think China is more like 37.3 years, something to that effect. And so 60% of the Vietnamese are under the age of 35, very young, vigorous, and they are very skilled labor force as well. You know, with a growing population, it represents a ready market for manufactured goods. And that's why now Vietnam is the hotspot for many companies that's going in there to do manufacturing. And also with the cost of doing business rising in China, and then Vietnam's population and the low labor cost is offering an alternative, you know, to cheap and available labor. And also in Vietnam, the middle class is increasing faster than any of the other Southeast Asian country. And today, the Vietnamese government has invested a lot of money into education, probably the most, more than any developing countries today. Next. Wages in Vietnam remains less than half of that in China. The rise of wages in China has forced many of the manufacturers to look for different alternatives, look for different market with lower cost. And so Vietnam, with its low minimum wage and growing economy, it's a great low option alternative to China. I mean, the Vietnamese, I think right now their minimum wage is about $190. 10 years ago when I was working in Vietnam in 1996, if you finished college degree and you work for a foreign company that you're bilingual, you can speak the foreign language, your salary at that time would have been like $50. They would be so happy. So if you pay them $100, it's like, wow. Today it's gone up to 190. Vietnam has the infrastructure boom today because the government had also spent a lot of money to build new ports, highways, and hospitals. What they do is they try to upgrade the old hospitals using international companies. When they invested in healthcare in Vietnam, they bring them to these older hospitals and trying to upgrade those hospitals. And they are investing $921 million to improve industrial parks because, as I said earlier, manufacturing is huge and it's growing. So they are investing money into there to kind of lure in more foreign investment there. Vietnam is strategically located, down in Southeast Asia. To the right of Vietnam, it's the Pacific Ocean. To the left of Vietnam, it's Laos and Cambodia. And borders to the north, it's China. And so especially with China being so close to Vietnam, it's an ideal location for foreign investors. And being where it is, it's near the water. Proximity to the other Asian markets is, it helps tremendously. Being so close with the coastline, the country is close to many major shipping routes and providing much better conditions for trading. Vietnam also signed quite a few trade agreements, free trade agreements. They are member of ASEAN and ASEAN Free Trade Area. And then they're also a member of the World Trade Organization. They signed the bilateral trade agreement with US back in 2000. And I'm proud to say that I was involved in that process when I was working there in Vietnam in logistics, representing a US company. We had to involve quite a bit to lobby with the US government, lobbying why it's such a good idea to have that bilateral trade agreement for the two countries, because it's better for the both countries. And then also Vietnam had their free trade agreement with the European Union, and that came into effect in 2018. So as you can see, of all of these treaties, it shows that Vietnam is eager to promote the country's economic growth and will continue its commitment toward trading with many other countries. And I think right now they have about 6 relationships with 60 countries where they do trading with. Next, we're going to talk about trends, the 5 key trends of Vietnam's real estate market today. Number 1, industrial sector. That is the hottest sector right now for the reasons I've been sharing earlier. The manufacturing has been increasing in Vietnam, so there's huge demand for the industrial park, for warehouses, for all these different manufacturing services, because more foreigners are pouring into Vietnam to do more manufacturing there, to take advantage of the cheap labor costs and the skilled forces there. Office space, believe it or not, here, I don't know about your market, but in Northern Virginia, DC area, office space is just abundant. But in Vietnam, the office space continued to soar. I think last year they had probably peaked the most expensive price for the rental. And so we're expecting to see that also continue in the year 2020 as more companies are coming into Vietnam to expand their operations there, to have their presence there. Retailers and the mall developers, that's a little bit of a different story. They have to reinventing themselves. And I think most of us here in the US as well, we're seeing the same, where they do have to reinvent because the way that we have to do business with COVID, and the retailers also have to compete with the e-commerce folks that's online. And supplies, inventory is still in the shortage, is still short, just like us here in the US. However, the reason for that is because the government is cracking down on corruptions. And so with that, currently, they're going back, they're looking at some history to make sure that all the paperwork and the previous projects are aligned, are in line with the government requirements. And so what they're doing now is that they're really cracking it down. So a lot of people now, the government officials, are very afraid to sign send approval for projects. And so that's why a lot of prolonged delaying approval process. So that's why you don't see many of that coming out of many new projects coming out of Vietnam today. And they're expecting only very few that's going to happen this year. One of the things I wanted to also mention, green sustainability. I think that that's something that you're going to see a trend that's going to go up for Vietnam. And with that trend, why is green, why more people are interested in that? Because now people talk about fine dust, people talk about virus. Since those become the buzzwords, more and more people are moving toward the green movement. They already had a couple green projects in Vietnam that actually LEED qualified. They spent a lot of money on that. And as we're moving forward, you're going to see more and more of that coming up. And with that, they're going to use a lot of high-tech technology to support all of those sustainability. Okay, and sustainability is not going to be a trend, it's going to be a future. And Vietnam is very up with that, and they want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of that movement. So they're focusing and they're moving toward becoming more green with sustainable technologies. And the whole idea for sustainable technology is just so that they can save cost, innovative design, so to attract more occupiers and tenants and foreign investors. Okay, now that you heard about the history, the culture, the trends, let's look at opportunities. What are the opportunities in Vietnam? There's quite a bit, and there's two that because of COVID and also prior to COVID that's very big for Vietnam. The hospitality industry. And that is here in the US, you're going to see that. The hospitality industry is during the past couple months, they had to shut down. The airlines had to shut down. The hotels had to shut down completely. And so with that shutdown, it had left many businesses on the brink of going bankruptcy. And so with that, they're trying to offload that. So that helps the M&A for mergers and acquisition for Vietnam. That's huge. That's where a lot of people are now, foreigners are going into Vietnam to invest into these hotels, resorts is where they're going into, and that's where they focus and spend a lot of their money. And they're scooping up a lot of those hotels there. And besides, besides the M&A, for the hospitality, we talked about residential. And the residential, the Vietnamese government had changed the law since July 2015. And with that law change, it allows for foreigners to purchase real estate, to own real estate in Vietnam. And since, that helps Vietnam's real estate market went through the roof. Okay, so now when you talk about buying real estate, I want to focus a lot of my time here because I think that I got a lot of questions on this, and so I want to share that with everyone. So if you or your client are interested to purchase real estate in Vietnam, a few things I want to bring to your attention. First, as a foreigner, we can buy into development projects. There is a restriction though on foreigners. So when you go into these development projects, the foreigners, we can buy into, if you're looking into condotels, you as foreigner can buy up to 30% of that development project. Okay. Now, if there's not enough foreigners in there, the Vietnamese can, buy those into that 30% as well, but they reserve that 30% for foreigners. And then if you're interested in buying sort of like townhouses or villas, these are homes, like detached homes here in the US, then you can buy up to 250 units in that project. And they put that restriction on because they think that they're low cost, that foreigners can come in and just swoop it all up, and the Vietnamese will not be able to get into that market, number one. And also, they want to restrict foreigners to own only certain project in certain location. And the reason for that, you and I as foreigners, we cannot just go into Vietnam and say, oh, I like this piece of land, I like this house, I want to buy it. It doesn't work like that. And the reason for that is because they are concerned about the national security. These development projects, they've been selected, put out in a certain way so that it's not, in a security area, national security, that would impact their national security. So, they planned it out in a way like zoning. And so that's why you and I cannot just go and buy just any homes. You have to buy in these development projects. Actually, there isn't laws out there that saying that you can't buy the secondary market, like a house from relative, but it's not suggested because there isn't laws in place yet. So if you buy that, you're going to get yourself stuck in a mess. Then, it's just a lot of unnecessary headaches. All right. Just like any type of investment, whether you buy it here, stock, real estate, anywhere in the world, you have to do your due diligence. And I can't say this enough times. You've got to do your due diligence. And first thing is that you look at, determine your investment goals. What is it? Where is it that you want to invest to? What is it that you want to invest in? Do you want a villa? Do you want a townhouse? Or do you want a condo? And what city do you want it in? Do you want a beach resort area? Or do you want it to be in the city? So you got to determine your investment goals. And number two is that learn about the project. Learn about the developer, learn about that area. That's no different than here in the US. It's the same. And then make sure that your property can be owned by foreigners. That's very important because sometimes you can be going into, or somebody can take you into a project, but that project has not been set up for foreigners to invest. So when that's the case, you do not want to invest into those projects because when you do that, you may run into headaches down the road. So it's safe when you go into those new development projects and stay within those, and then they'll have paperwork to prove that they can, you as a foreigner can invest and you can own there. And you want to confirm with that developer or with the real estate agent that you're working with, and also the developer, that you'll be able to receive the ownership certificate. The ownership certificate is sort of like a title here in the US. And so you want to confirm that they'll be able to provide you the certificate of ownership. And then one of the things that I find so many people don't do, and it's so important when you invest globally, internationally, across borders, is that the banking requirements. Some country, getting the money into the country is tough, but getting the money out of the country is even tougher. And that's definitely is the case for Vietnam. So you want to make sure that all that is lined up, all that is aligned before you make that leap. And then one other thing that I really call people's attention to is the exit strategy. And that comes with, you got a plan. If you can't sell it, well, does the law there required for you, allow you to sell, to lease? Do they allow you to sell? And then do they allow you to send that money back to your home country? That's very important. And a lot of people don't think about that. They get so excited when they see these beautiful beach properties. They jump in, and then when they need to sell, they realize, oh, how do I do this? And they don't have all the right paperwork in place. So that's very important. So once you decide to make that leap, what are the things, what are the next steps, right? What do you need to do? As I always tell people, you need to work with real estate professionals. So work with somebody that's there, that's been in the business, that's had been trained to be a real estate agent. Because in Vietnam, they probably over 300,000, they call it real estate brokers, but brokers there is different than here. They're just the people all that they do is just introduce the seller with the buyer, and then they get their money and then they're done. They don't provide any service to you. So make sure that you are working with a professional real estate agent. And then if you work on a big project, if you work for a company that want to, have a plant, manufacturing plant in Vietnam, then I highly suggest that you hire a real estate attorney. But if you just buy like a condo, a small home, then you don't need to do that, because when you buy into these projects, the developer themselves already have the attorney in place and to provide that support for you. So you don't need to have to hire a separate real estate attorney. And then Then the next step is after you decided which project you want to get into, you have your real estate agent that kind of introduce you to these projects. Then most of the new projects, what they do is they will have the announcement of the new project. And this is like the very first announcement that goes out. And you and I, we usually don't hear about these events unless we have some type of inside contacts with these developers, and you would know about it. But otherwise, in general public, your real estate agent, they will be able to provide you that information when they know that there is a new project coming up. And when they have that announcement event, then they will get invited to that, and they will take you to that event. And it's important that you as an investor attend that announcement of new project event. And the reason why that is important is because when you get there, that's the first time the developer will announce, or they will provide a few basic information. They will provide you information with like the location where this project is going to be, what area it's going to be, the type of project. Are these going to be condominiums? Are these going to be row houses, townhouses? Or are these going to be villas? Are these going to be mixed use buildings, or stuff like that? And then they'll tell you the number of units that they will have. So then you'll know as a foreigner, you can only buy into 30% of that. So if a lot of foreigners are there, then if you're interested in that project, then you need to make fast moves. And then they'll tell you the price range. They don't tell you exactly what the price is going to be, but they'll tell you the price range along with some of the other things. And then if at that first meeting, you like the project, you want to make a move into a purchase into that project, then you want to pay a refundable booking fee. And that it ranges, anywhere from $2,500 to like $10,000, depending if it's mid-range, middle range, mid-range, high-end, or luxury, varies. But about in that range. And then after you paid, and that is a refundable booking fee. And then after you paid that, then you'll get a booking number, and then you'll be on their list of first buyers. You're the VIP guest of first buyers. And then what they'll do is, after a couple of weeks, then they will organize another sales event. So this event is their official sales event, and you can attend that. Usually if I invested, I would attend that. Or if for whatever reasons you can't be there, you can have your real estate agent go there to represent you. But this event is only for invited guests, for only those people with the booking number that are invited are allowed to come to this event. And so at this event, you will be provided with more information. So at this event, you'll get the floor plan. You get the unit types, you get the design, you get the layout, you get how big the square footage, the size of that, and then you get the price, and then they'll add other additional details as well. And then, again, if you can't attend, send your agent, he or she can attend that for you and collect information for you. And then at this event, you can select the unit that you want. And then if you're not satisfied, at this point, you say, oh, I was going to get that. And for whatever reason, you change your mind, you can still request for that refund. Only when you sign the deposit agreement, that's when that money now becomes no longer refundable. Then you're done, you're committed, okay? Or if you don't want to proceed, then you lose that deposit. Okay, but so once you finish with that event, you select the unit that you want, then the next step would be signing the deposit agreement. And usually that process is like 2 to 3 weeks after the official sale event. And then at this time, then the deposit again has become non-refundable. And at that point, when you sign that deposit, you have to pay about 10 to 20% of the value of the unit at that time, okay? And once you're finished with that, then it comes the next step is you have to make a commitment with the sales and purchase agreement. And at around 3 to 6 months after you paid for the deposit agreement, you will sign that sales purchase agreement. And why is it not right away? It's because the Vietnamese law only allow if the developer can get the money from you, when they already built in the infrastructure of the foundation, when they already have the foundation of the project, then they can collect more money. And that's why that process is usually 3 to 6 months. That's when from you do the deposit agreement to the sales purchase agreement. And so After that, the next step would be then you follow that sales purchase agreement and you make the installment according to the agreement. And so the law indicates that as a foreigner, we have to pay 50% of the unit value installment prior to the handover. So what you do is at this point, when you sign the sales purchase agreement, you pay up to 50%. And then the next time that you will make the next payment is when the developer ready to hand over the unit to you, and at which time you pay an additional 45%. So now at that point, you already pay up to 90% of the unit, right? And you do not pay the last 5% until they are ready to give you the certificate of ownership, which is your title. And at that point, you pay the 5% final, and that fee is for the certificate of ownership. And for and then you also pay a maintenance fee of 2% of the purchase value. So totally in your purchase, you will pay 102% of the value of that project. Okay. Okay, so when we talk about certificate of ownership like title, in Vietnam, in the past, they just have one type, which is they call it the red book. And they say red book because the cover of the book is red. But recently they have a new book, it's called a pink book, and also because the cover is pink. But the two are very similar, yet they're a little bit different. The pink book is usually for condominiums. For us foreigners, when we invest in Vietnam, mainly our title would be the pink book. The red book are for people who purchased land. Then they would have the title. The title would be the red book, because the red book is titled to land. The pink book is for condos. Okay. And the pink book, it proves ownership, and the red book, it proves ownership, your rights to use the land or the property. It allows you the right to lease the property, sell the property, and even get a mortgage or get a loan on that property. You can demolish it if you want, you can maintain it, you can renovate it, you can rebuild it. But again, you have to follow the Ministry of Construction, their laws and requirements and how you can do that. But I mean, at least with that title, with the pink book or the red book, then it allows you to do those things. Okay, so these are the very, very important document. And I can't stress enough the importance of these documents. You got to keep the original, and probably best to keep it in a safe at your bank, because when you want to sell this property, without these documents, you're gonna run into a hard time getting your money out of Vietnam, at least up to date. We don't know that, they may be changing that down the road, but for now, they're very strict. And because of their regulating in money laundering, they're very concerned about that, and they regulate their currency. So the document that, and you need to understand this, because these, you need to keep them all along the way. Okay, so like the sale and purchase agreement, when you sign that, you make sure you keep that original. It's notarized, so you want to make sure you keep that original copy. You want to keep the title, which is the pink or the red book, and there's only one book, there isn't a copy book. And then you want to keep the receipts of all the records of all the payments. The whole process for this is to make sure that you have proof that on the way out, when you want to sell it, you said, here's the proof. I actually brought this money into Vietnam when I transfer the money in. And here's, this is now I'm ready to sell. This is how much I sold it for. And you have receipts when you pay to the tax agency. So you prove it to the bank that you have already sold the price that you sold. You have the sales and purchase agreement, how much you bought it for. And then that receipts that you already paid for taxes, your tax obligations. Then at that point, they'll transfer that money to your home country. But that's very important, and a lot of people forget. They get overwhelmed and they lose these documents, and then they run into a situation where they get stuck with the money there. I mean, there are other ways to do that, but we're not going to discuss that on this platform. Okay, so quickly a rundown on the installment payment schedule. So first is that when you put in the refundable booking fee, when you go to that very first announcement meeting, and then you go to the second, you go to the official sales meeting. That's when you sign the deposit agreement if you like something there, and that deposit is refundable. And then, no, before that, when you go to the refund booking fee, then you can pay a deposit. That's refundable. And then when you go to the second event and you like something something and you want to move forward with it, then you sign a deposit agreement. At that point, the deposit is no longer refundable. And then after that, you will sell a sales and purchase agreement. And with that sales and purchase agreement, they will have terms in there of when you make these payments and what percentage, 10, 20, 30% or whatever. Then you just follow that. And then until up to 50% only. They cannot ask you to pay more than 50% at that point by law. And then at the handover, when the unit is done, they turn it over to you, then you pay an additional 45%. At that point, you already paid 95% of the value of the property. And then when they have your title ready, then at that point, you pay the additional 5% to get that pink book. And then on top of that, you have to pay the 2% maintenance fee, okay? All right, and this concludes my presentation. I know I talk really, really fast, but I want to make sure I go through all of it and allow us some times for discussion and questions and answers. But you know, I have to say, I love, you know, with this, I want to leave with you the quote from Jim Rohn. It said, "Learning is the beginning of wealth, and learning is the beginning of health." And that's a quote by Jim Rohn. And so with that, I wish all of you great health, and I wish all of you great wealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Liu, for a very informative presentation. Next, I would like to introduce Shun for Q&A.
Thank you, Teresa. So let's move to the Q&A section. We have several questions. I know some of the questions you might already answer. So let's answer the first one from Anne Trende. She's interested to know, how does the government invest in education, college or high school? And how can we help into the support with the US college education? And she's also interested to help with the IIT Alumni Board of Director. So she's asking for any suggestion.
Okay, so to answer the first question is regarding to what the government, where are they investing the money into education? They're doing that across the board in all their own school. But currently today, I have to say that even though the government putting a lot of money into changing their school system to raise the standards, they are bringing a lot of international school into Vietnam today. So your kids do have a choice to go either to the local school with the non-foreign instructors, or they can pick a school that has the foreign instructors. So they're putting a lot of money there. But at the same time, I'm glad that this question came up, because it leads to another opportunity in that a lot of Vietnamese are very interested in sending their kids overseas for schooling. And this to us is a huge opportunity for us here, because it's a way to get them to come here, because the first, when their kids go to school here, they buy a home for the kids. Next thing you know, they buy a business, then they buy commercial properties, and then they want the kids to stay to operate the business. And so this is a huge opportunity for us. And I know here in the U.S., we have like over, the international student had spent quite a bit of money, at least $800 million a year into the U.S. economy. And that's a good number. And so with that said, the Vietnamese government is spending a lot of money there. And that's the number one thing. When you connect with the networking with the Vietnamese, instead of first thing asking them about the business and stuff, ask them about their kids. Ask them about their kids' school. Once you ask about their school, guess what? It just opens to all these conversations, because then they want to start showing off, my kids go to here and here and here. And then, oh, where are you from? Oh, you're from the US. They love to send their kids to the US. Why? Because it's most expensive. With housing and the cost of the school, it's most expensive. So to them, going to the US is sort of like the brand name. Right? So that's why when they're very proud to say, oh, my kids is in the US. Australia is a little bit cheaper. Let's say the US would be like $50,000 a year, then Australia is around 30, 35 a year. But now we're seeing more and more other Vietnamese going to Australia more, because it's closer to Vietnam and it's cheaper. And surprisingly, we're seeing more and more of them going to Canada as well. And of course, the US is still is a big thing. And I'm sorry, what was the second question? I did not know what that organization was.
The IIT Alumni Board of Director.
Anne Trandai, can you tell us what that IIT?
Okay, we can move to the next question while we're waiting for her to respond.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. It's very detailed on that question. So our next question from Frederick Durgang. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Are there any housing project near Dana Beach?
Da Nang? Is it Da Nang?
Yes.
Yes, yes, there are. That's my hometown. They got quite a few projects there, and actually Da Nang has becoming one of the big spots for Vietnam, and the reason for that is because it's well known for the beaches that's there, and that's central part of Vietnam. So yes, there are a lot of projects. On this forum, I'm not supposed to be promoting any particular projects, but if you are interested, then inbox me and then we can discuss further, then I can help guide you through.
Okay, very good. So the next question from Michelle Nguyen. Can the new construction unit be sold to another interested buyer before the completion of construction? So basically, the second buyer will take over once the unit is completed.
Yes, it's sort of like flip here in the U.S., but without an actual home in place yet. Vietnamese, they do quite a bit of that. I mean, they can sell a property within 2 weeks, within a month, and they already make, you know, a couple grand already on it. But as foreigners, it's not encouraged for us to do that, but we know that there are people that are still doing that. A lot of people are doing that. But what you do is, if you're going to buy a property in a development project, you can buy directly from the developer, or you buy it through another foreigner. And because they regulate that. So that's why they want to make sure that you buy it through either. And because of the year terms is 50 years. So let's say if that foreigner already in that place for 5 years, so now it only have 45 years left on that leasehold. And so then, you know, that's why they would, you know, the person that purchased it, now they no longer have the 50 years, they just have the 45 years left.
Is that common in this kind of practice in Vietnam, that people tend to sold it before the completion of the project?
Yes, yes. The Vietnamese do quite a lot of that. Now, like I said, they don't encourage the foreigners to do that, but the Vietnamese, they do it every day, because when the developer make the first announcement, a lot of the media comes to do the coverage. And guess what? These media are the one who buying them also. And they buy and they come back, they kind of, you know, talk up about the project, and then they resell it within a month, and then they make a couple grand. You know, a couple grand to us is nothing, but to them, a couple grand is like a year's salary. So it's big for them. So there's a lot of that going on. And sometimes a unit is transfer of ownership 10 times before that property actually, you see the actual completed unit.
Okay, so Anne is back. She's muted, so can you let her speak? Unmute her, please.
Hi, Lieu. This is great to see you, and this is a great turnout. Thanks, Alice, for inviting me. I have a question, because actually I'm on the alumni board for one of the IIT, which is Illinois Institute of Technology. We're off to have some international gatherings in Paris before, in India, and next year in China. And I'm trying to be co-hosting it to go into Vietnam. We have a lot of students coming from Vietnam. And what I'm trying to do is trying to establishing some college connection with some of the University of Bách Khoa and other things, the more of a high-tech engineering school. I don't know if you do have a connection with that. So I know there was a lot of alumni from Vietnam coming to United States, going to, because I was alumni on board. So I'd like to
Absolutely. You have my email. So let me know which school you want to connect with. We definitely can connect you to those schools.
More of the engineering and science school in Ho Chi Minh and in Hanoi. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. We definitely can connect you to this to those schools.
I also have a question. A gentleman asking about the Da Nang. I do have another large portfolio of Da Nang hotel and residence, including the villas over there in the nice beach of Da Nang. So I send you a private note, but if anybody interested, I would be able to send to them directly. It's an off-market deal of a very high international hotel resort there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for the question. Now, the next question, it's from Jeffrey Ha. what is the capital gain tax rate for real estate in Vietnam for a foreigner investor? You mentioned earlier that there are some new real estate laws that favor foreign investors. What are some of those new laws?
Well, before foreigners are not allowed to own real estate in Vietnam. Now they allow, since 2015, they allow foreigners to own real estate. So that's huge. It opened doors for foreigners. Before, foreigners was not able to, they can buy, but only if they're married to a Vietnamese or they under somebody else's name in Vietnam have to represent them. They cannot be their name on the paperwork. But with this new law, it allows you and I as foreigners, we can buy real estate in Vietnam and the certificate will be in our name and not in somebody else's name. And that's highly recommended because there's some people, they're trying to go in, they try to purchase something at a low price and then it doesn't work out. They didn't get the deal they want. So guess what? They go out and they said, okay, they talk to a Vietnamese person, hey, you know, I'll help you. I'll pay you this amount. And then they go in and then the Vietnamese will negotiate so that they get some kind of deal, a great deal for this buyer. So then that's what they do. But then when they do that, then the foreigner's name cannot be on that paperwork, on the title. It's only the Vietnamese. And so it's not recommended because there's so many disputes going on because that happened. Because prior to 2015, people were just buying real estate using relatives, friends, whoever, that they paid a fee to get them to represent them. And in the end, those people don't, you know, say, well, this is my property. The paperwork says my name, I'm not giving it back. So because the real estate has gone up so much. And so it's not recommended for people to do that. So that is a huge step forward in the law changes in Vietnam. There's a lot of laws that's still in progress. Like last night, I said I attended a conference that I was supposed to be in person, but because of COVID, so I'm here. So I just kind of attended it online. And, you know, they talk a lot, and this is something that you didn't see previously, but now you're seeing a whole lot more in Vietnam, is that they are allowing for people to voice their concerns, voice for changes. And so, and it's nice that they have these associations. For example, NAR's association in Vietnam is the Vietnam National Real Estate Association. They lobby for certain issues that support the real estate practitioner or the developers. So they you know, they lobby for better taxes. They had some regulations that came out, and somebody up there just made a decision that made no sense to the business folks, the developers. And so they fought so hard, and finally now the government removed one of those law and, you know, make it better. So Vietnam actually now they're really trying to listen, and they seek foreigners to come in to provide consulting for them, so that because they understand that they need the foreigners' expertise because they're still so new with this. An example would be like Vinh Group is the largest developer in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese love them because they think that they do everything by the book. They, you know, very good and well respected and all of that. And so what they do is they always go out and they look for experts in certain area, and they invite these experts to come to Vietnam, and they pay them top dollars for them to come to work for them for a short period of time, so that they can get that expertise, and so they can make those changes, they can impact those changes. And so now actually our role here at NAR, like what I do as global ambassador for NAR to Vietnam, is that we share with them best practices of what we do here in the US. And a lot of times, like for example, they have certain questions that said, look, we never had this product here before. How do you guys regulate that in the US? So then what I do is I try to get those regulations here in the US and then share that with them, or connect them to talk to the expert here so that they can share the experiences. And so we do a lot of that with them. In Vietnam now, it's amazing that the government allows for people to speak out on those things that, now, hey, you come out this policy, it doesn't work, whereas before that was unheard of. So it's a huge change in Vietnam's policy.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for all the questions. I actually have one more question, a real quick one. So in Vietnam, how's the property tax handled? That's one of the fees, I believe. I mean,
they, you know, it's interesting. They only do it once a year. I'm sorry, one time. So when you make that purchase, you make that tax payment. And then when you sell it, then you pay, you know, a certain percentage for that. And that's when you want to transfer your money out of Vietnam, they want a copy of that receipt to show that you do have, you know, you had already paid your tax obligations. But that's changing because they see how we do it here. We have property tax, you pay annual property tax. So I think that's the direction that they're going to be moving forward pretty soon. And, you know, although the people there does not like that, but, you know, that's the direction I think that the government is definitely going to go toward.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. This will conclude our questions and answer section today. Now let's move to lucky drawing. Pauline?
Thank you, Sean. And Ching Chao, everyone. Now is our lucky draw time. Thanks for our great sponsor, Joe Lam and Teresa Nguyen, Long Direct, for their generosity for 3 lucky draw gift cards today. Joe and Teresa, can you say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Just want to remind everyone that you need to be present to win. So when your name pop up on the screen, please go into the chat room and say, I'm here, okay? Okay, let's start the lucky winners. Come on, let's spin the wheel. Catherine, who are you on? Are you still on? Catherine? Okay, I guess she's not, so we have to, is she on? No, she's not on, so we have to go to the next, spin for the next person. Jessica Han, are you still on? Jessica?
Just type yes if you are still in on the chat room.
Yes, she is. Congratulations, Jessica.
Jessica is in. Congratulations.
Dennis Lin, are you still on? Dennis?
Dennis is not here.
Okay. Okay, spin again.
Dennis is not here.
Spin again.
Ben is not there. Annie again.
Annie again.
Benny, wow, Benny too. Congratulations. Benny.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
On? Is Fanny on? Oh, there's
All right, do we have time for one more?
Yes, one more. Some reason we can't hear the wheel spinning. There's a sound. We can't hear the sound.
Pauline, you can start singing.
Singing?
You can start singing.
Now we can hear it a little bit, yeah.
Are you lucky? Are you
Pete
lucky?
Chin, are you on, Pete?
Kitchen. Are you lucky? Are you
Pete
lucky?
Chin, are you on, Pete?
Kitchen.
No Pete. Okay, next. No Pete. Let's spin again. Kim Lim, are you on? Kim Lim, are you on?
Yes.
Yes, congratulations to the 3 winners. Yes, congratulations
Yeah.
to the 3 winners.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Teresa,
Thank you.
for the wonderful drawing section. We want to move to the wonderful drawing section.
Thank you, Pauline. Our next global series is June 26, Friday at 5 p.m. Our special speaker is from China, Mr. Jin Shi, President, International Operation China Alliance of Real Estate Agencies. His topic will be China Real Estate Market Update. On behalf of the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors, we would like to thank Ms. Lieu Nguyen for your informative presentation. We would also like to thank our sponsor, Joe Lam and Teresa from Loan Direct for their generous gift. Thanks everyone for joining our session today. This meeting is now adjourned. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next time. Thank you.